Nick Schuster is the Managing Director of Barossa Accounting and Taxation Services. I caught up with him to mark the changeover from the financial year and to have a general chat, not professional advice, just a general chat about what's changed between the financial years, what you might want to be looking out for if you're an employer or an employee. Nick, 30 June has rolled around. We're into another financial year. What is that, first of all, meaning for you in the business when it comes to what's happening this financial year?
Well, first of all, I guess it's a big sigh out of relief that the last year's gone and all the flurry of tax planning and trying to manage people's 2021 taxable incomes, getting that under control. So we're in a financial year now, but now we start the administration of tax for 2021. So there's plenty to do, and I guess these early days is a good time to start getting on top of a couple of things before we all get what happened.
And I know that you've got, in your past, you've got a bit of a farming history or background. For farmers, is this a time of year that's a bit of a headache, suddenly realising you've got to get a few things in order?
I was probably saying for any small businesses, but yeah, you're right, I do have a history of farming and certainly still carry the farming community pretty close to my heart, and we certainly try to be there to help people out in that department. For the farming folks, I'd probably encourage people just to, while the things are still a bit fresh from previous year, to dot the I's and cross the T's a bit. So things like making sure you've got livestock numbers recorded. Obviously, your accountant needs to know what your livestock holdings are to do your tax returns properly. You'll probably, if you've paid shearers or farm hands or whatever, you'll be needing to finalise your payroll, which these days has to be done through single touch payroll. It's been a bit of an irritant, I guess, to a lot of small business people, particularly people who don't actually employ that many staff. Might only employ shearers for a week of the year, but you can't just write out a group certificate anymore. You've got to report that through single touch payroll, which has to be done through SDP enabled software. So that's certainly a bit of a bugbear, but there's no exemptions left now. The transition period's over. It's time to get to the program.
What about for this current tax year, just for small businesses generally? I know there's been write-offs, for instance, when it comes to asset purchases. What have been some of the positive things for businesses when it comes to the tax arrangements this year, maybe compared to last year?
Oh, well, certainly with the COVID situation, the government's sought to incentivate people to get out there and spend money and stimulate the economy. So, it's fairly unprecedented in my time in doing tax anyway, that you can get unlimited tax deductions for buying equipment. I mean, they used to have the immediate asset write-offs up to 20 and 30,000, but now it's pretty much unlimited. So it's been a good opportunity for people to manage their 2021 tax obligations just by buying that piece of equipment that they need and getting an immediate write-off for it.
Yep, so that's pretty positive. And what about for your income taxpayer, your employee, I guess, when there's some tax cuts that have come their way that come into effect this financial year? Yeah, so
the government brought forward its tax cut measures, which it had slated for the next couple of years. Then that got through Parliament with sort of fairly general support to try and get more money in the hands of taxpayers. So we now have our low and medium tax offset initiatives there carrying forward, and the increased tax thresholds that apply to your marginal rates of tax. So, for example, last year you only started to pay 34.5 cents tax once you were over 37,000 in income. Now that's 45,000. So there's just been this lift in tax brackets, which reduces tax payable. Taxpayers don't really need to do anything in order to take advantage of that. It's all sort of taken into account in their tax withholding and their wages and so forth. So no action required, but we should be seeing some refunds coming in this tax season for individual taxpayers.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So that people who have, that they'll see that in effect through their pay, I take it, because there's less tax being taken out of their pay. They don't have to wait but to claim that in their refund, or they'll see some in this year's tax refund and maybe more in next year's. How's that going to sort of manifest in actual money in pocket, fortnight by fortnight?
Well, you might have recalled around October last year when these tax cuts were given the cent, that the PAYG withholding rates were changed at that time, and so people did start collecting a bit more take-home pay from that point forward. But because it was only for a part of the year, we'd still expect a bit of a extra refund to be coming through when tax is finally lodged. But yeah, the PAYG withholding tables get adjusted to take into account those, and so you would expect it to be sort of reflected in your normal tax withholding pay by pay.
Yep, and so this financial year, is there anything particularly nasty that people need to be on the lookout from a business or an employee point of view when it comes to tax?
Oh, look, the ATO always has an ongoing audit program. Every year they sort of come out with announcements how they want to check this and that. This year they've sort of indicated they've got a bit of a focus on the work from home deductions, because obviously that's been a big factor for people the last 12 months. And as usual, they're always wanting to scrutinise rental property deductions and things like that fairly closely too. So the ATO's got some good stuff on their website. If people are doing their own tax, obviously if you've got a tax agent, your agent would advise you, but the different methods of claiming home office expenses are laid out reasonably well on the website, and just make sure you follow the rules.
Yeah, I suppose one thing people would do well to do if they've sort of triggered listening to this or thinking about it's been 30 June is probably to get their records in order, for instance, on when they were or weren't working from home if they intend to claim for that.
Yeah, that's right. If you're using the cents per hour method, you need some sort of a reasonable basis, like a diary or payslip records or whatever that can justify the hours that you're saying that you work from home. But it's much like the farming small business people, where make sure the bits and pieces that you have for your deductions are in order and you've got them somewhere. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to claim something, you should have a receipt for it. And so just a transaction on a credit card or an actual receipt is usually acceptable. But yeah, while it's still fresh in your mind, it's a good time just to get all your stuff in order.
Well, you've been generous with your time. Nick Schuster from Barossa Accounting and Taxation Services. If people want to follow that up with you, if they're in your area, what's the number they could ring?
Yeah, so we're in Euripta on Gawler Street, 088562 2777 is our number.
And of course, this conversation isn't independent professional advice. You do well to get your own advice from Barossa Accounting and Taxation Services, or anyone you want to catch up with about all of these things we've talked about when it comes to your tax this financial year.